Alrighty, so today we are going to talk about Sporting KC in the Moving Forward series episode. And keep in mind, I'm doing this Moving Forward series episode of Sporting KC before the US Open Cup final that they're going to be playing against LAFC tomorrow. And there's no doubt that, a lot rise on tomorrow's game for Sporting KC. I mean, we all know in leagues play, it's been a disastrous season. It looks like they're going to miss out on playoffs for the third time in the last 6 years, which is kind of crazy to see because this team under Peter Vermes before 2019 when they missed out on the playoffs for the first time in what seems like forever is that they always made it to the playoffs, but they've been kind of inconsistent lately. And again, the core that they've been having for the past couple of years, it's kind of disappointing to see how that core not only has underachieved in league play, but also in the playoffs as well, as they have so many chances in the playoffs, but unable to get it done. And again, this year they don't even have to worry about it because they've already eliminated from the playoffs. And again, the 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 season kind of maybe will be determined tomorrow whether they do win that U.S. Open Cup against LAFC. I think it still will consider a successful season because I always do believe that when you win a trophy, even if it's the U.S. Open Cup, it is still consider a big trophy and a lot of historic trophy, especially of the controversy that goes on with the U.S. Open Cup. And I would also say that in terms of the them clinching a CONCACAF Champions Cup spot. I mean, you can maybe also say that that's kind of a success as well. They're going to be playing in the CONCACAF Champions Cup next year, no matter what's going to happen in that final, because since LAFC already have clinched a spot heading into the final because they clinch it being the runner-up of the Leeds Cup, then yeah, Sporting KC already at least have that on their present, and they get to face against Liga MX opponent or even Central America opponent in the next CONCACAF Champions Cup as well. Now, with that being said, they did finish the season. Well, actually, they didn't finish the season. They're currently 8-7-16. And what's kind of weird is the fact that they're currently sitting 12th. They're actually above St. Louis right now, but because the fact that St. Louis have a game in hand, and not to mention St. Louis does play against Minnesota on the final day of the season, and Minnesota, of course, owns that ninth spot. So technically, St. Louis is still alive, even though they're St. Louis is below where Sporting KC is. I know it's kind of weird that's how it is, but Sporting KC, of course, officially eliminated after losing to Minnesota this weekend. But yeah, currently they have an 8-7-16 record with 31 points. They score 49 goals this season. Goal scoring has not been a problem for Sporting KC. This team has done well in terms of goal scoring, and this has kind of been the case. The goal scoring has been pretty good for the Sporting KC side under Peter Vermes. But the problem for them under Peter Vermes in these last couple of years is keeping the ball out of the back of the net. And this season, 58 goals conceded this season. It's not that as high as you would see in previous year where they conceded a lot more than that, but it's still not great. I mean, it's a pretty high number, and their goal differential is -9. They're currently 12th in the Western Conference. Looking at the last 5 seasons, I mean, it's been kind of a mixed bag for Sporting KC when it comes to how they finished the season. I mean, last year they finished in eighth place, and it was kind of a miracle the fact that they finished in eighth place. Remember, they started the season with a 10-game winless run, still made it to the playoffs, even won a playoff round against their hated rival St. Louis City, but ultimately was eliminated in the second in round in the hands of the Houston Dynamo. They finished with a 12-8-14 record with 44 points. In 2022, they missed out on the playoffs in 12th place with an 11-7-16 record with only 40 points. In 2021, this is kind of the best season that they have. Well, I would say it's the best season, but then I forgot about the COVID shortened season when they topped the Western Conference. But in 2021, they finished in third place with 17-7-10 record and finished with 58 points. They got eliminated in the second round as well, this time to RSL at home. And then in the COVID shortened season, as I mentioned, they finished at the top of the standings. But I've also mentioned that was the season where it was kind of a little bit misleading. The fact that they were finishing first, and that I kind of consider themselves a little bit of a fraud coming into the playoffs. And yeah, they kind of got found out against Minnesota, losing in the second round to them with 39 points. And then in 2019, that was the first season in a long time. I think it's actually the first season under Peter Vermes that they did not make it to the playoffs. Finished in 11th place with 10-8-16 record and finished with 38 points. Now, in terms of the top goal scorer on this team, if you can believe it, it's actually William Agata that is the top goal scorer. I mean, as much as at times that he's been snake bin this season, it's quite crazy to say that he actually is the top goal scorer with 9 goals, and Alan Polito not far behind him with 7 goals. He's definitely starting to scoring goals again. I mean, Alan Polito was way off the pace, but it seems like he's been finding his stride in these last couple of games. Eric Tommy with 7 goals as well. Johnny Russell with four. And then Steven Afrifa leads off the top five with 3 goals. Top assist leader, it's actually Memo Rodriguez. Who would have thought that Memo Rodriguez, who remember a couple of years when he was with the Houston Dynamo, he was the top goal scorer for Houston. He's definitely played a bit of a changing role for the Sporting KC side. He's been slot more in the midfield role, more as a playmaking role, and that's again, it's kind of crazy how that's kind of his new position, and that's the new style that he played, completely different than what we saw doing his time with the Dynamo, and even doing his time with the Galaxy as well. But he has 6 assists, followed by Alan Polito with 5 assists, Johnny Russell with 5 assists, Daniel Sherry with 5 assists, and then Jake Davis from that left back position actually got 4 assists to round up the top five assist leader. That's kind of crazy to see Jake Davis on that list to consider. He's more of a defensive minded fullback, and yet somehow in some way he still gets on the assist chart, and also he's definitely right up there in terms of the goal scoring chart as well because he scored a couple of bangers as well this season. Now the best win so far for Sporting KC, it actually happened just recently. That game against Colorado at home last weekend. Well, I say last weekend, but this was back in the middle of the week. This was actually on the weekend. Again, this was the game before they play against Minnesota that they lost. That pretty much means that they are eliminated from the playoffs. But yeah, that was the best game that they play, and probably arguably the best game that they play. I mean, against a Rapids team that was red hot coming into that game, and with all the confidence, you would have not expected Sporting KC would put up a whipping on Colorado, a team that under Chris Armas they do not take big losses, unless of course you're playing against the Portland Timbers for whatever reason. When they play against the Timbers, especially on the road, they take a bit of a whipping. But yeah, that was a complete performance by Sporting KC. Almost looked like the old Sporting KC that we know of in that game. And again, by far the best performance and the most best win that they had so far. The worst game for them, again, the thing about Sporting KC is that there's a lot of candidate for worst game, especially in the earliest season, where it was like Groundhog Day with this team, with the amount of times that they've blown leads. And it's hard to believe that I'm actually going to go with a worse game that they actually didn't lose. This one, you wouldn't have expected me putting a worse game for a team that didn't lose, unless, of course, that team have a great record and finish well this season. Which, in the case of Sporting KC, obviously they did not finish well this season. But I want to say the free draw against the Timbers, that is probably the worst game, I would say. Even in a game that way they draw in that one, that absolutely felt like a loss and a half. I mean, they were 3-0 up in that game. William Agata had a chance to make it 4-0 from the spot, and then he missed that penalty, and then it just turned. Like, it's just an absolute self destruction by Sporting KC in that one, and that kind of I wouldn't say that was where the beginning of the narrative. I think the beginning of the narrative started in that Galaxy game when they lost that one. I would argue maybe that game probably could have been the worst game because the fact that they actually lost that one. But I think this one, the fact that they were well in control in this one and was on their way to make it 4-0 and just completely collapsed in such a quick fashion too. Like in a span of 10 minutes, the Timbers turned into a, well, actually I wouldn't say 10 minutes. It was more like a little bit over 15 minutes. Turned from a 3-0 deficit to 3-3 like that. Yeah, that was just absolutely devastating if you're a Sporting KC fan in the beginning of just almost felt like Groundhog Day of how many times they conceded late goals and how many times they draw points late in the game. Now, in terms of the average attendance, 21,856. That's good for 15 in the league. Obviously, that number really bumped up because one of the game was at Arrowhead and there was 70,000 in that game when Sporting KC gets the great sweepstake of playing at home against Inter Miami, something that not a lot of Western Conference teams get a chance to do so, but yeah, there was 70,000 plus. Certainly the 70,000 plus have some mixed feelings. Some obviously are happy to see Messi and the team win, but obviously Sporting KC fans were not happy with that result because they lost that game, and they also gave up a late goal as well because that's what Sporting KC did, at least in early in this season. Now, in terms of MVP of this team, I'm gonna go with Eric Tommy. I mean, Eric Tommy has been really good for this team. He's been he's kind of a bit of a deep line playmaker, but at the same time, I also think that he is probably one of the lethal long range goal scorer in the league. I mean, he always he's pop up in some space where if he is even licensed to shoot, he's not going to be afraid to shoot, and he's not afraid to hit that one into the back of the net. This is why it's very important that when you face against Sporting KC, you do not allow Eric Tommy any space to shoot, because he's going to usually find the bottom of the net. He's a very good long range goal scorer, and again, playmaker as well. One of the best midfielder, probably one of the more underrated deep line play making midfielder and goal scorer in this league as well. Disappointment. I mean, I could have easily gone with one of these front three, as I mentioned. You know, the front three core of this Sporting KC side: Polito, Russo, and Showery. I could have easily gone with either of them. I'm gonna go with Daniel Showery, mainly because I think Johnny Russell did deal with some injury. The same goes for Polito. Daniel Showery didn't really miss time with injury, and again, this is the thing about Daniel Showery doing his time with Sporting KC that's kind of frustrates Sporting fans, because they know how good he can be. He's a guy that there's some years where he absolutely lights up in terms of the goal scoring and scored double digit goal, and then there's season like this where he just looked completely off. I mean, the inconsistency is a huge problem in his career, and that it's kind of unfortunate to see. And in some way, I feel like Daniel Sharry kind of also determined what kind of season Sporting KC had, because when he's on, Sporting KC is doing well. When he's not on, yeah, Sporting KC is probably not going to be doing very well this season, and it's no surprise that since he's not on, yeah, Sporting KC is not having a good season. Now, in terms of young player to watch, it's got to be Stephen Afrifa. I mean, Stephen Afrifa, a guy that just almost came out of nowhere in terms of the middle of the summer, kind of play into to this team on the depth chart, and then just started to score goals and started to bring up the hype train. So much so that the Canadian national team actually called him up during one of the international window. Now he has kind of slowed down a little bit in terms of the goal scoring, and he hasn't really gotten as much minutes, which I'm kind of surprised to see, because I'm really high on this kid, and there's a reason why. The Canadian national team, the reason why they're so good in the CONCACAF region is that MLS has really helped them in terms of developing some good players, and that we've seen a lot of these MLS players and a lot of these Canadian MLS players do well with their team and represent the international stage, and also do well as well. That's also great for MLS as well to build that brand, but also just kind of shows you that, hey, this is gonna be a league that, even though it could be a selling league, it can be a league where if you play well, national team is gonna call you up and give you some playing time as well. So Stephen Afrifa, a guy that again just kind of almost came out of nowhere. You would have not heard this guy in the beginning of the season, but he really blasted in the scene, and there should be some more good thing that could come with him in the near future as well. So what went right for Sporting KC? So as I mentioned, they're in the U.S. Open Cup final. It will be interesting to see whether they can win their fifth final, and also continue the narrative of LAFC losing in a cup final. They clinch a CONCACAF Champions Cup next year as well, because LAFC already CONCACAF Champions Cup spot after finishing runner up in the Leeds Cup. So Sporting KC basically get that spot as a result, that as it is the next in line. So certainly congratulations of them getting to play against Liga MX or even Central American team next year as well. They play much better in the second half of the season. I mean, I say that they played much better. That's kind of nitpicking, and again, when it comes to these teams, it is really hard. I'm kind of nitpicking at times in terms of talking about what went right for these teams that have had some really bad season in the league play, and I think in the second half they have definitely played much better. And that one of the other thing that they did in the second half of the season is that they stopped giving up leads late in the game. I think again, that narrative was a big problem in the beginning of the season. Not so much, at least in the second half of the season. Though, as I said, that is the first thing that went wrong with this team. I mean, just it felt like it was Groundhog Day for Sporting KC fans, seeing the beginning of the year where they were just giving up leads after leads after lead every single game. It must be tiring to see that. The defense is still bad, and again, it's not a big surprise. They try everything when it comes to signing new players to fix that defense. It is not working whatsoever. And I feel like this offseason they're probably gonna have to do the same thing again. And then, as I mentioned, the front three court they did not look sharp. I mean, they did not look like as lethal as we've seen before. And maybe part of that is because of age that started to catch up. I mean, Johnny Russell, he has definitely suffered a bit of a sharp decline because he's now in his 30s. The same goes for Alan Polito as well, though. Again, he's been injured so many times. throughout his time with Sporting KC, and Daniel Sharry, of course, having an off season as well. So yeah, it just feels like the front three core. And again, this front three core, it could be one of the league full front three core when all of them are on. But when they're not on, again, it just kind of feels like it's a disappointment for this Sporting KC side because they have such a good attacking core. But when they're not on, yeah, they're not going to win a lot of games because they're kind of one of those teams that need to outscore their opponent because their defense has not been great the last couple of years. And then moving forward for this team, Peter Remy's future with a question mark. And again, this year I think this has been a year where Peter Remy's future has really started brought up. I mean, for the past couple of years, it's been brought up in Sporting KC fans. It feels like Sporting is kind of in that same stage as what I experienced with Adrian Heath with Minnesota, where I know when Adrian Heath during his latter year, the fan base had a very divided they kind of opinions about Adrian Heath. Some of the fan base says that it should be Heath in. I think he's doing a good job. At least he's still keeping this team into the playoffs. And then some are saying that he needs to go because it doesn't seem like this team is moving in the right direction, and in many ways they're moving in the wrong direction. That goes the same for Peter Vermees as well. And I know Peter Vermees, the longest active head coach right now in the league, but it's getting to a point where the old saying, all things has to come to an end eventually, and you just feel like these last couple of years, it feels like the game started to pass by Peter Vermees, and there's a reason why nowadays in MLS and just in the world of football as well, you do not see a manager stay with a single club for such a long time. It is very rare that has happened. It's even more rare to see Vermees. It's hard to believe he's been there for almost 15 years right now, but you just kind of had a sense the writing might be on the wall for him. And again, the tough part about this is that it seems like the ownership group still believe in him, even though the fans don't feel like that is the case. It's gonna be a big debate. And again, I make that comparison of what I said about Minnesota when their fan base had that debate about Adrian Heath. It feels like it's the same thing right now with Sporting KC fan in terms of Peter Vermees' future as well. More defensive reinforcement and maybe a new goalkeeper as well. And the reason why I say that is Tim Mealy is getting up to the age. He's going to be 39 next season, and I know goalkeeper have more doability. They can play later into their career, but Tim Mealy, these last couple of years, he hasn't really been that good. You can clearly see that he started to decline a little bit, and that is getting to a point where, yeah, Sporting KC will feel like they probably need to think about replacing him eventually. Obviously they do have a goalkeeper lineup in John Postgam, but John Postgam hasn't really been that good lately, so that might be a spot that they might really need to look at in the future, especially with the way that for Tim Melia, I would say maybe next season might be the year where he might be starting to think about retirement, or maybe the year after. Because when you get to 40, that's when you usually see goalkeepers start thinking about, well, is this it? Is this finally the year? And especially with the way that Mealy hasn't really been that good in the last couple of years. Maybe he might be thinking about that. Yeah, Father Time may have finally caught up to him, and it's hard to walk away from the game, but you got to know when it's to walk away, or else you're gonna have the same. You have to deal with the same situation that Tim Howard did when he was with the Rapids in the second season, where he just completely fall off the cliff to a point where he was just completely washed up. And then the last thing moving forward is will they even be making a run for the CONCACAF Champions Cup next season? That's a big question because again, I don't know if they have the depth to really go deep into that competition. You want to, of course, do well in every single competition, but I don't think Sporting KC is one of those team to do so. And not to mention, maybe they will get a bit of a hard draw too, because I think usually when you win the U.S. Open Cup, you get a bit of a tougher draw. I might be completely mistaken, but yeah, that's going to be something that we'll see whether if they do make a run for it. I mean, ideally they would love to make a run for it. I mean, they have done well in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. They went all the way to the semifinal just a couple of years ago as well. But we'll see what their focus is going to be. I think their focus is going to be on league play, and the most important thing is just get himself back into the playoff contention, because this is kind of a weird situation that Sporting KC had. The core that they have, I mean, it is starting to age a little bit. They maybe think about heading a transitional period, especially with the future of Peter Vermees. But you just kind of have a feeling that maybe they might still have enough to have one last good run to MLS Cup. But interesting situation that Sporting KC find themselves in right now. It's almost like they're in that crossroad kind of period right now, and we'll see they will make the right moves to improve the team to once again get them back to playoff contention. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. As always, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? If you're a Sporting KC fan, what do you think went right, went wrong, and most importantly, moving forward, how is this team going to look heading into next season? But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.